Going to Mexico to buy insulin is kind of a last resort. To be able to live another month or two, that's my only option at this point. ¿Tienen insulina Humalog? No? Okay.
Paloma is one of 1 million Americans with type 1 diabetes who requires manufactured insulin to live. And now, she's down to her last vials.
So I have a drawer that's specifically for insulin, and this is all I have left. Once upon a time, this had a lot in there.
Lack of access to affordable insulin is a crisis affecting people across the nation.
It's a growing problem.
The high cost of insulin is forcing people to...
A 22-year-old died because she couldn't afford life-saving insulin.
This is a personal story that comes from a growing national problem.
If you don't have access to that medication, you'll die.
It's causing people to go bankrupt.
People are trading sexual favors, almost like, can you afford to be diabetic?
I have patients come and see me, and I don't have an answer for them.
Since 2012, the price of insulin has more than doubled, making diabetes one of the most expensive chronic illnesses to maintain in the U.S.
Good healthcare!
It's resulted in protests, border crossings, the solicitation of prescriptions online, and rationing. We traveled the country and spoke to people in these dire situations.
You can't prevent or cure an autoimmune disease. I could have been sad and moped about it. Either route, I was still gonna have diabetes, so I chose the positive route. I created an online persona, and now I'm better known as Glitter Glucose. It kind of just took on a life of its own. Today I'm super excited to share a recipe.
Paloma has been living with type 1 diabetes for about 5 years now and has seen the effects high insulin prices has had on her life.
I've been seeing my insulin supply dwindle for a while. I'm getting nervous. The insulin alone is $9.50, test strips are $80, my pump supply.
Even through the Affordable Care Act, Paloma still ended up with a monthly bill of $950 for insulin. Insurance only covered her for $100.
It's like having a whole second mortgage.
The list prices for insulin, or the price in which the manufacturer suggests a product should be charged, has changed drastically in the span of 5 years. For instance, Humalog, the fast-acting insulin Paloma requires, was around $127 a vial in 2012. Now it's around $275, which is more than a 100% increase.
Families are being devastated by the rising cost, not only if they're uninsured. Most Americans right now have high deductible plans. So they're having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars before they can even utilize their insurance benefits.
Nicole Smith has become a known advocate for affordable insulin across the country, but her voice in the fight stemmed from tragedy.
I saw the medical examiner bring my son out in the black body bag. So the rationing didn't work for Alec.
Her 26-year-old son, Alec, was unable to afford insulin through an insurer and began rationing, a deadly method using less insulin to make it stretch longer.
Once he turned 26, he was no longer eligible to stay on my insurance. With a salary of about $40,000, he didn't qualify for anything, really. We were directed to purchase insurance through the marketplace, through the Affordable Care Act. What we were finding on there was just it was scary. The premiums were really high. The deductible was ridiculous. So he chose not to purchase the insurance.
On Alec's first visit to the pharmacy, his insulin and supplies came out to $1,300 for the month. Unable to afford it, he walked away with no purchase.
You know, kind of piecing things together, figured out that he was rationing what he had left, probably to get him to payday.
His body was found in his apartment 3 days before payday.
Yeah, we're a family of 6. And then to go from a family of 6 to a family of 5, when it was like losing a limb. It was like...
A recent Yale study found that 1 in 4 people ration the life-saving hormone.
Patients are dying because they don't have access to this medication. How are we not talking about this day in and day out?
Dr. Joshua Miller specializes in treating patients with diabetes, but also shares a commonality with them. He lives with the disease himself.
They tried to depict the various players in the system related to patients getting their insulin. And I get a headache when I look at this.
Dr. Miller is referring to the insulin supply chain, which shows the movement of insulin from manufacturers to patients. Pharmacy benefit managers, manufacturers, and pharmacies are key stakeholders within the chain. The movement of transactions and payments amongst these key stakeholders is where patients can experience markups in their insulin prices, ultimately forcing them to take matters into their own hands. After hearing about an abundance of affordable insulin in Mexico, Paloma is making her first trip across the border to collect as many vials of insulin as possible. We just crossed the border of Nogales, Arizona, and this is Nogales, Mexico. When you come across, you see pharmacies, you see lunch spots, and you see where people can shop. But Paloma is here in search of affordable insulin. Now, she hopes to find some insulin and bring it back to the States so it can last her another month or so.
Hola. ¿Tienen insulina? ¿Tienen insulina Humalog? No? Okay.
Paloma's monthly cost of insulin and supplies equals out to $1,295, with insulin as the highest on her bill. We did the math, and if the price maintains, she will be paying around $15,000 a year. 31 years from now, when she's 60, she will have paid close to $500,000.
So basically what I see the pharmaceutical companies acting as is one of the largest drug cartels in the United States.
There are 3 insulin producers who control 90% of the global market: Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi. And each time one significantly raises their prices for insulin, the others follow suit.
These 3 companies have a monopoly. Some people have called it a cartel.
Elizabeth Feister is the founder of T1 International, a nonprofit that advocates for type 1 diabetics around the world.
I'll say it again and again. It's unacceptable, and that's why we're here.
But she's also an American citizen now living in the UK, unable to afford and live as a type 1 diabetic in the United States.
I would love to be able to move back to the United States. My family, my dear friends are there. It's just not realistic.
Extreme measures like moving to a different country or crossing the border to go to a pharmacy are only a few of all too many sacrifices patients have had to make to stay alive.
We're hearing patients who tell me they have to decide whether to pay for their rent or pay for their insulin. They're having to ration their insulin, all to stay alive.
It's gotten to the point where it's almost like, okay, I'm good for this month, but how am I going to survive next month?
Paloma herself has had to risk getting insulin from her diabetic community online. In fact, the remainder of her insulin isn't even prescribed to her.
You see the name on this bottle? That's not me, right? Someone was really kind and they gifted that to me.
Selling or gifting insulin online is not an unfamiliar practice. Many diabetics have built online communities not only for emotional support, but to lean on each other in times of desperation, even if it's considered illegal. Oh, is this the stevia?
This is stevia, yeah.
So what you do is, it's basically saving people's lives, but it's not necessarily considered legal. This is the mother of a type 1 diabetic little boy. She remains anonymous because when her son has enough insulin and supplies to last through the month, she helps out others online by providing his prescriptions so that they may live.
So we have like another full section of the kitchen that's just devoted to like pump supplies. It's not a good position to be in where you feel like you could get in trouble for saving someone's life, especially when it's really not hurting anybody else. You know, that when I give a diabetic person insulin because they can't afford theirs that month, the thought that that would be wrong in any way doesn't translate. To me, that means that the system is wrong.
I received this message, and it was from one diabetic to another. I can get you whatever you need at my meetup. I also have a friend with a fridge full of anything you need. You know I know people to get you set for a long time. If I didn't know that they were talking about insulin, I would think that that's a drug trade.
Yeah. If you were in any situation where we're forced to choose between, you know, sounding like you were doing something illicit or actually being alive, you would choose the living part. You know, you never know what's going to happen because we are so beholden to our insurance system. I could be the next person online begging for help for my child. I just hope that people can see their own kids when they think of mine, and they would understand. Sorry. I'm really scared.
It's wild and outrageous that in the American healthcare system, which, you know, so many people perpetuate the myth that it's the best healthcare system in the world, that people with diabetes are having to purchase or share insulin with people they have never met on the internet because that's how desperate they are.
At the end of the day, if I didn't have good health insurance coverage, I would be doing the same thing.
She said that they have another location that's bigger than...
Back in Mexico, Paloma struggles to find insulin.
Let me ask this guy. Pienso que se llama Farmacia Benavides. Okay, let's try it. The Humalog. No? Okay.
Is it what you expected?
I expected it to be a tiny bit easier. There was plenty of insulin, just not the specific kind that I prefer to use. I did get one box.
$46.
Okay. This was $45. I'm grateful that I did find this one vial, but I do feel a little sad that we didn't find more.
So how long do you think this will give you relief?
Never. Until there's a change, I probably won't ever feel the relief. This bottle that I have in my pocket is the only thing keeping me alive, and the struggle to get this, it definitely plays a toll on my mental health.
America has a problem with the high cost of prescription medicines.
The magnitude of the insulin crisis has captured the attention of both the Senate and House, igniting a fiery bipartisan probe and investigation of the three insulin manufacturers.
I can't explain the cost increases. I've seen a lot of.
What's wrong with a model of comparing U.S. prices to prices in other industrial nations?
Right now, it is so convoluted and so non-transparent. I feel like I need a PhD in prescription drug pricing to understand how the heck this industry works.
People are telling us that they're rationing the lives of their children. How does this work?
Drug manufacturers say there's a cost increase because of the millions of dollars it takes to produce. Novo Nordisk, one of the leading makers of insulin, told us the cost underlying any medicine we make is based on more than manufacturing cost. It also involves discovery, research, and regulatory development into the medicine. Just recently, Eli Lilly, one of the three main manufacturers, offered a generic insulin that would cut half of its current price. But people in the fight against the high cost of insulin say it's not enough.
You ratchet up the price of insulin 1,000% since 1996, and then you say, oh, we're offering it at half price. You're trying to look like the good guy.
Lilly offering half-price insulin, that's not an answer. That's a distraction from the conversation.
Patient-led advocacy is working. People have been speaking out, have been demonstrating, and these companies are scared and they know that they need to do something.
Congress needs to act. This is a public health crisis, plain and simple. That crisis will continue. It will get worse. It will skyrocket.